All right, so we have a big test. The big test is on recursive. It is going to take all hour tomorrow. And here's some of the easy stuff. We'll start with the easy stuff. All right, see if you can answer these. If I had this sequence, u1 equals 12. It's a funny looking one. And then u sub n equals u sub n minus 1 times 1.035. And then I said n is greater than or equal to 2. Is that arithmetic or geometric? Geometric, because it's multiplying by something. Is it growth or decay? Growth, because it's going to get bigger each time, because see, this number is bigger than 1. Next, what is the growth rate? 3.5%. Very good. Next one, this is called something. What's that called? The domain. And it basically tells you that this will only work when this number here is 2 or bigger, because you can't use it to find the first term. First term has to be given to you. And what is the first term? That's supposed to be a 12. 12. Okay, I know it's hard to read. Okay, 12 is the first term. All right, what if I asked you for the fifth term? Use your graphing calculator. Put this in right now. And if you want to keep, you know, I know a lot of you guys have got that system going where you have 1 plus. You could do this 1 plus 0.035. And I know some of you have that like divided by 12 in there. If you want to leave that in there, like it says divided by 12 right now, if you want to leave the spots for that so that it's easier to change it later, you can divide by 0.1. If you ever thought of that, but that would leave spots there in case you want to later change your equation. Fifth term. Yep. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Good question. When you make one of these things, the question is, how do you know whether to use a 1 or a 0 there? If they are going to ask you for like the fifth term, like tell me the fifth term or the 10th term, then start with the use of 1. Because if I make a list for you, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, let's say that's my sequence, and I call it U1, U2, U3, U4, U5, and I say, what's the fourth term? It's easy to see. Oh, fourth term is this one. But if I had chosen the U0 thing, it would work. But if I asked for the fourth term, it's actually U sub 3, which is kind of messed up. So you don't want to do that on that kind of problem. When would you use U sub 0? Yes. Time and money in real world problems, yes. Okay, so if you're, it doesn't even have to be time and money, but anytime it's a real world problem, I'd start with the use of 0. Because that way, let's say it's an investing problem and you're investing $20,000 and you call it U0, that means you start with that. Time hasn't even started yet. You're going to start your problem with 20,000, and then U1 would mean after 1 year, and let's say you were getting 10%, you'd have $2,200. No, sorry, $22,000. That means after 1 year, and that makes sense again. So choosing the right thing to start with is critical. And if it's a real world problem, start with 0. And if it's the one about what's the 10th term, start with 1. All right, that's a very good question. Let's move on to the next kind. Oh wait, let's get an answer for that one that we were just doing. On this one, the fifth term. Raise your hand if you got it on your calculator right now. All right, LT, what'd you get? Can anybody verify the 13.7? All right, good, that must be right then. Okay, so basically it went up a small percent each time, and eventually it ended up to 13.7. All right, so my next question is a real world problem involving time, and so you're going to start with U sub 0. And it's a loan for college. It's one of the few things that I would say it's okay to take a loan out for where you're not being dumb. Okay, yes, occasionally a house is another good one. And occasionally there's even a business opportunity where you can take out a loan where you're being smart because, hey, if Bill Gates hadn't borrowed some money, he could have never got this huge company that turned out to be worth bazillions of dollars. Not Intel, which one this is? Microsoft. He could have never got that going without a loan. And Steve Jobs and his other buddies that started up Apple, they couldn't have got that going without a loan. So there are some situations, but so many people get loans for dumb things like, ooh, I really want to go on this trip and I don't have the money, so I'm going to pay a ton of money for interest. It is a personal choice, but I'm telling you, financially wise, you want to take out loans only if that's going to help you in the long run. So, okay, here's a loan for college, which I would say is most people nowadays are taking. Doesn't mean it's good. If you can avoid it, awesome. But $20,000 loan. In fact, the average loan in the United States now is $24,000 for college loans. Okay, and that's old. That's not what you'll be. The kids that are taking college when you take college 4 years from now will be taking more out in loans because the price of college just keeps going up. Okay, so it is typical to have college loans. Then U sub n minus 1. And then what is a typical rate for college loans? Well, you're adding, of course, because it's interest and you're adding on to your balance there. And a typical rate is around like 6% right now for college. And that's usually compounded daily, actually, but we usually use monthly. Just divide by 12 there. And then a typical payment, let's say, they tell you you should pay like $100 a month for it, but you want to get it paid off early, so you choose to pay off $300 a month on this loan. Would you please figure out for me how long it would take to pay off this loan? Good question. Minus means loan. Investment is where you start with a whole bunch of money and your amount of money is going to go up every month. Oh, okay. The middle part, yes. In the middle part, whether it's a loan or an investment, that was plus right there. All right, I want you to get this in your calculator, and sometimes you can fool yourself into thinking, I get this, I'm fine. I want to check. So what we're going to do in a minute is you're going to hand your calculator to the person sitting behind you, and they're going to look and see if the numbers are right. So get your calculator looking right. So let's get faster. Okay, looking at their calculator, the top line should say 0. The next line should say U sub n minus 1, and then it should have a, here, I got to scroll back a little bit just to let you see this. You should have times 1 plus 0.06 slash 12. I have 060 slash 12, which shouldn't hurt anything. They don't have to have that extra 0 after the 6. And then minus 300. Okay? Would you please look at their y equal screen and make sure that that's accurate? Then, guys, help me out. It wasn't on the 114th line. Which line was it on about? 80-ish? Okay, I'm going to go with 80 on my table settings then. So when I go to table, it should get me there eventually, painfully, slowly. Okay, there we go. Okay, so how many of you are looking at one where theirs worked and it got to 82 months is what it took to get it paid off? All right, so how many of yours are looking at one that is not correct? All right, 1 or 2 people. Okay, good. All right, then get the calculator back to its owner. Good. I get that most of you know how to enter this now. That's good. All right. Now, how do we actually use this? In a typical problem, here's what they're going to say. How much, okay, we think we took a loan for 20 grand, and so you're going to be paying back 20 grand. But you're going to be paying more than 20 grand because you're going to be paying interest, right? So how much do you really pay on your college loan? How many payments do you make? And the most common mistake is to say 81 payments. Because after 81 payments, you still owe them money. Granted, it's like a small amount, but you still owe them another payment. So you go 82 payments, and then what do you got to do? you subtract off the $211.20. Okay, do that right now. Figure out how much money did this person really pay for college. It wasn't $20,000. It was $20,000 plus interest, which added up to a total of what? So right now, what you should be doing is 82 times 300. But that would be a little bit too big because they, to be fair, they owe you some money now. They owe you back how much? Because they paid $300 every month for 82 months. The leftover, yep. Because if I go back over here and look at the leftover, hold on, I don't want to graph it, I want a table, come on. Okay, it was $211.20. So I'm going to put that. Okay, so I got to take that and subtract 211.20. And there's my grand total, $24,388.80. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. What if the question asks, how much interest did you pay? Nope. $4,388. Why? Because you thought you were paying 20 grand for college. If you subtract off the 20 grand, that 4,000 is interest. The extra that's above the 20,000, that's the interest rate. All right. Now, here's the hard parts, the places where people get stumped. What if I change this problem to quarterly? You're changing it from a divide by 12 to divide by 4. But that part most people get. The problem is when you're reading the table, what if this was quarterly? Each number is every 4 months. That's right. So let's just do this right now. Let's go to quarterly payments. So go to the y equals screen. Break. Okay. And in there, change it to dividing by 4. Now you realize we're making our payments now not monthly. We're making our payments, if we divide by 4 here, then with every payment that we make is going to happen only once every 3 months. 4 times a year. Okay, quarterly means 4 times a year. All right, so now if I go do my table, if I just change it to quarterly payments, then it's going to be a certain number of quarterly payments. Oh, I did something wrong. Sorry. I have a $20,000 loan, and then it should be increasing by 1.06 divided by 4, and then I'm making $300 payments quarterly. Why is it staying the same with 20,000 open over there? You guys know what I'm doing wrong? Pause for a second here just to figure out. Okay, one of my kids figured this out. It happens to be with these numbers that when you make $300 payments on this thing, that it ends up being perfect amount of money so that the interest that you owe is exactly that much. So you're paying $300 a month, you're exactly paying off the interest every time you owe it. So it ends up working out perfect that the loan amount never changes. Very good. Glad you figured that out. Okay. So that's why our 20,000 isn't dropping and it's staying exactly the same. Just a freak chance that happened to be the amount of interest we owe is exactly $300 every quarter. So obviously if you did that, there actually are loans like this that are built like that. They're called interest-only loans. So you take out a loan on your house for $100,000 and you just pay interest. So literally 10 years later, you still owe $100,000 on your house. All the payments you were making were just interest. So it's kind of depressing because you never pay your house off, literally. Why would you do that? Only because the payments are lower, because you're only paying interest. So in the end, I know it's really depressing. You never pay your house off. People do that. Actually, partially because, too, if they think they're going to move, like, I'm going to take this job for 3 years, and then I'm going to move to California, then they really don't care if they pay this house off. because they're only going to be here for 3 years anyways. You know what I mean? I know, it's kind of dumb, but people did it. It's called interest-only loan. All right, anyway, if I go in and change this to, let's say, $700 quarterly, now I'll get to see some action. So everybody change it to 700. Now go back to your table, and now my loan is shrinking, and now somebody smart can figure out where I get it paid off. Would you please do that quick? Find it as fast as you can. We'll have a race. Who's got it first? What month is it paid off? Or sorry, what quarter is it paid off? $38. All right, cool. So I'm going second table settings. I'm going to set mine to 37 just so I can see the change. And then I'm going to go to second table. All right. So now, remember that means 37, actually 38 payments need to be made. And these are 38 quarters. As in every 4 months you made a payment. So that's not 38 months. It's not 38 years. It's 38 times, there's 3 months in every quarter. Okay? So if I want to figure out how many months that is, I do 38 times 3 to figure out months. But if I want to figure out how many payments I made, I did make 38 payments. And then they owe me 288 back. That's safe to say. But how long did it take you to pay it off? That's where that can be tricky. It would be 38 quarters or 38 quarter years. Okay? So you're going to have to then multiply by 4 to figure out how many years, divide by 4 to figure out how many years that would have been. Or if you want to figure out how many months it is first and then divide it by 12, that's okay too. All right, so last thing that I think I'll mention to kind of messes people up. Let's say we had said, I don't know how much of a loan payment it should be. You figure it out for me. So here's an example. Let's say it's that same $20,000 loan. Everybody go back to your Y equals screen. And let's say that we want to do it monthly because that's more normal. Most of your problems are going to be monthly. Occasionally we'll throw in that quarterly. Okay, so it's monthly. Everybody go back in here and change this. We'll leave the interest rate at 6% too. That's fine. And I'm dividing by 12 now. Okay. Now, I don't know what payment to make it so that it gets paid off in 5 years. How can you figure it out? My best advice is guess and check. You might take a guess at a payment that might be close to paying it off in 5 years. How about this? If we had to pay it off in 1 year, then we'd have to pay monthly payments of about $20,000 divided by 12, right? So let's say it was $1,000 a month, we'd be paying off $12,000 a year. So $2,000, $3,000 a month. Oh, sorry. Yeah, $1,000 a month. $2,000 a month would be getting me $24,000. That's okay. So what do you think? How much a month to pay it off in 5 years? Just pick a number. Okay, so let's try. Don't try. We tried the 300 before, but that was when it was quarterly. So try 200. So you just give it a shot, and you go over and you go to your table and you see how long is it taking to pay that thing off. Well, this is in months now. How long is 5 years in months? 60. So we should really be going around 60 to see if it's paid off yet. So I go up here to 60, and is it paid off yet? All right. And if it's not paid off yet, then we need to make a bigger payment, right? How close are we? Well, we're only like halfway paid off. So maybe 400. Okay, so then you go back here, and you change it to 400. Do you get what I'm doing here? I'm just guessing and checking. This is a big part of the project that you're going to have. Is we're going to ask you to figure out how much a month you'd have to pay to get your school loan paid off in 10 years. In my example, here's a 5-year payoff. All right, so we're trying 400 a month. Now I go to my table. Ooh, it's pretty close. Because it just changed at, yep, 58 months. Ooh, that's really close. Okay, so 400 a month was pretty close to the right amount for payments. Okay, and you could tweak it just a little bit more. We got to get what? We want to pay it off a little faster or a little slower? A little slower, so you want to pay a little less than 400 a month. So, like, seriously, you might have to change it to 398 or something goofy like that. Somebody got it? 390? Okay. So that is an example of how you guess and check your way to finding out what payment should you make. All right, 390 apparently works. Check that. Table, somebody's verifying if that does work. And we'll have it on the screen here in a second. Yeah, it's, I don't know why it shows up over here and it doesn't show up over here. Okay, anyway, yep, there it is. Take 60 payments and then they owe me a little bit of money. All right, and another typical question from the test would have been, would you please take your calculator right now and figure this out? How much did they pay total? Because remember, you paid back your $20,000, but you also paid interest. So hopefully what you're doing is 60 payments of how much? And then you subtract off 233 and you get 23166. Raise your hand if you can verify that. Only 2 people are verifying that. That must not be right. Okay. It was supposed to be how many payments again? 60 payments times 390. And then subtract off how much? So help me here. I don't get why only half the people are saying that's right. Oh, it's just a rounding thing. Please don't do that. Okay. Time-wise, you are correct. Okay, I will get to that. All right. So I need to, you know what I need to do? I need to move that attendance thing to like 10 minutes later because it always catches me right at the very end of my lesson where it kind of annoys me. I'd rather not have it annoying. But you're right. I need to get it done. Thank you. Okay, so 23,167. And so if I had borrowed 20,000, my final answer then is, what is the interest I paid? That's a typical question. It's 3,167. We're rounding here. About 3,167 bucks. Yes. Why are we subtracting that 233? Okay, good question. On the calculator, if I make 60 payments, it ends up with this negative number. What that means is that I overpaid by that amount. I overpaid by $233. I couldn't have stopped here though, because I still owe them money. And literally, I know a person who did this, and they stopped with $200 left on like a car loan, and then because they thought this payment should be enough, and they had a little bit of a balance left, and then they got a bill from the company for that 200 bucks, and then they sent them that, and then they got another bill from the company, literally 1 cent, because by the time they paid their money, they owed more interest on the interest that they had owed them. And so, like, it takes a while if you don't do it right. The best thing to do is just make that one extra payment, because I think a lot of people think that the company's going to like just take it. They're going to just take your whole payment even though you don't owe them all of that. They have to, by law, send you back that 233 bucks. They can't just like keep it. The only thing you can do on that, some people do this, it's kind of interesting. If you have a bill like with a electric company, for instance, if you make a big payment, they can just hold it in the account until your next payment is due and then use that for your next payment. See what I mean? So some people actually will write a big old check to like the electric company, and then they don't have to write the check to the electric company for like 2 years because I got all this money sitting in the account there, and they just keep taking it out of the bank. So, but for insurance or for like paying off a house, they can't just keep your money. Yes. Yep. Good question. If you pay it early, if you paid your last payment and added an extra $155.91, then you wouldn't owe them any interest on that money because you're paying it off right then. You know what I mean? So then, yes, technically you could do that. But it's going to be a slightly different number because then you didn't pay interest on the $155.91 for 1 month. And so it's going to be off from everybody else's numbers. So in the real world, you can do that. But would you please just do it this way, where you pay that 60th payment and then let them give you 233 bucks back. All right. But in the real world, yes, what you actually do is you call the company and you say, I'm about to pay off my house and I want to pay it off a little early. Can you tell me how much to write this check for so that we'll be completely done? I did that myself, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I didn't want to have to pay interest on the very end of it. I just want to be done, get this over with. So you'd call the company and say, how much should the payment be? And they would, in this case, have said, then your last payment should be the normal $390 plus $155.91, and then you'll be good. So yeah, that happens in the real world. Okay, your homework for today is posted, and I strongly encourage you to do all of them. One of the kids last hour got done with all of them in class, so they can be done. And they're not, the very last one is the hardest one because it's one of those where you got to play with the number until you finally find it. Just play around with it until you get it paid off in time. But this is the best way to practice for the quiz tomorrow. I think the first 18 out of 24 questions are going to be a piece of cake, and it's only the last like 6 questions that are these harder loan investment kind of questions, and I think most of you are getting it really well. So principle is just that number you start with, the amount you start with, either the amount you borrowed or the amount you stuck in the bank at the beginning. It's the beginning number. All right, that's all the questions I got for now, so